Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
Thank you. Hey.
Is this one working?
Thank you.
All working? Okay.
So what we thought we would do today is just talk a little bit amongst ourselves, and you guys aren't meant to hear what we're saying. I thought we would talk a little bit. We thought we would talk a little bit about how we wrote this book, why we wrote this book, and then literally how we wrote it, because there's 639 other people aside from us involved in this book.
Some are in the audience.
Some of them are in the audience. Are there any contributors here?
Tonight?
Yay! Hi! Thank you.
Thanks.
And then we thought we would open it up to questions, because this book is all about questions, and that's how this book started, was with a question that Sheila had. Sheila decided that she wanted to learn how to dress better. She just realized that this was nothing she'd ever really paid attention to in her life, and none of us said, Sheila, you should really start paying attention. This is all on her own, and so she went to the bookstore to try to find a book that she could read that would maybe give her some tips or some rules or some guidance. But what she wanted was to know what women thought about in the morning when they got dressed. She wanted to know more about the psychological implications behind what people put on their clothes in the morning before they go out into the world. And this book did not exist.
Yeah, it just was. I mean, there's so many pictures of women in dresses and all that kind of thing, but I'm not a very visual person, and the way that I felt like I could start thinking about clothes, not that I'd never put any thought into it, everyone thinks about it, but I just had never made it a project, and I just thought, okay, I just want to make a bit of a project of it. And the way for me to think that I could dress better in a way that was more conscious, or a way that I felt more comfortable, or spend less money, or do all those things I wanted to do, was just to know what other women thought. And all the books were not about thoughts, they were about what things look like. And I just knew that I could not get anything from that. Like, I'm not going to imitate what, I don't know,
Audrey
Hepburn is dressed as. That didn't seem like that was going to go anywhere.
Audrey Hepburn's become the villain of like the person you're supposed to look like, but nobody can.
Well, when I visualized that book, when I visualized going down to the bookstore in downtown Toronto, I just see like books about Audrey Hepburn, Vogue, Audrey Hepburn. Anyway, so I came home from the bookstore and I thought, well, the only way to make this actually exist for me is to ask my friends. I wasn't thinking about a book. I just thought I'll send an email to some friends and ask them what they think about, and I'll just ask my stylish friends, Heidi and Leanne being among them. And the questions were like, what's your process for getting dressed in the morning? What are some dressing rules you have for yourself that you wouldn't recommend to others, but which are important to you? And I thought, I had this idea that everyone who's stylish, and now I'm more interested in everybody, but at the time I was interested in people who I considered stylish, they must have some philosophy. And I was thinking about this as a book of sort of philosophy of dress or philosophy of style. Yeah, that's what it was. That's what the
title was for a bit.
It was.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. I just remember
the
dry, and not exactly. But it did turn out that everyone that I sent the emails to had very strong opinions and very detailed answers to the questions. And Heidi wrote back and said, the experience of filling this out was so interesting for me. I bet the experience of filling out would be interesting for other people too.
Yeah, and so
we should make a book.
Yeah. And just to say, well, we should also talk about it, and then very quickly, Leanne. We pulled Leanne in.
Yes.
This is Leanne.
About 2 days after Heidi and I started emailing and said this should be a book, then the next thought was we should have Leanne involved.
Absolutely. Leanne had to be involved.
Yeah, I had the same reaction to the questions that Heidi had, which was I could spend a month thinking about this stuff, writing it, because it's clarifying. The questions were so different than the questions out there, I think, in style and fashion media, which is more, how to impress people or how to do something or present. And these questions were, why, how come, and it was a huge difference, and just a lot more like therapy, and that you could be completely honest and and artful in your answers and come to some sort of conclusions and clarity yourself. So it was an easy yes.
Yeah, and one of the Leanne ended up. Well, we all did all the editorial work, but Leanne did something none of us did, which was design the book. And the first thing she said, that's Leanne's daughter. The first thing that she said was, "I don't want pictures of women in the book." And do you want to talk about why that was?
I mean, it was. We were getting these survey answers in from hundreds of women, and these voices in our heads were so strong, and I immediately said, we can't look at them and hear them at the same time. We have to just hear them, because our snap judgments are, oh, why would I listen to her? Look at her hair, or I wouldn't wear that shirt. Like, shut up. And so no pictures of women in the book, so that there's no filter between, the I that someone's writing about, the tense that someone's writing in, and the first person and the person reading it. And so that was one very early design decision that we came to. And I also knew that the design of the book had to, again, allow for women to think and see in their mind's eye these experiences, and so it's a very clean kind of German 2-column design. I think it works. I want it to age well.
Yeah, and one of the things that one of the visuals is something called collections, where we solicited from women. Was it 8? You had to have 8 or more of something.
Yeah. What do you have?
Yeah.
7
What do you
or 8
have?
or more of?
Right.
So it's this sort of pattern. It could reflect obsession or compulsion, or just habit, like a deliberate collection.
Yeah,
and it was a nice, a nice portrait of a woman, rather than actually sort of showing the person.
Yeah, so instead of seeing a face, you see a grid of, in my case, I have striped shirts, lots of striped shirts.
Or chapsticks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Floss sticks.
Yeah, floss sticks. Yeah.
So clothes is kind of broad in that sense.
Yeah.
And the way that we got the survey out, there was lots of different ways. Leanne printed up these business cards that said, I like how you're dressed.
I like how you're dressed, or I like what you're wearing.
I like what you're wearing.
We had to play around with it because it sounded sort of creepy at first. It was like, I like.
Take it off.
I like you. And so we gave out these, and it said, we're making this book, Women in Clothes. If you'd like to fill out a survey, please come to our website. So we had the survey on our website, and we just gave these cards out to hundreds of women. And
it kind of worked. It kind of worked.
Yeah. I mean, it was I think for us, it was sort of an icebreaker, because I tell this story, the first card I gave out, and it was sort of like a big deal. You're like, I'm going to give this woman a card that tells her I like what she's wearing. And it was a soldier. She was in the military, and I saw her in an airport in Charlotte, North Carolina. And she definitely did not take it in the right way, I don't think. But I kept saying, please, will you please fill this out? Because she to me, she was sort of like, she became for me this kind of muse through the book. She was wearing a uniform. And yet inside of this uniform, she just looked so distinctive. And I just kept staring at her. I was like, how are you doing that? How do you look so distinctive, even though you are wearing the exact same clothes as all of these other people?
There's like Miranda July's piece in the book kind of resonates with that. She had 6 women all come in, I think it was their favorite outfit, and each woman wore the other woman's favorite outfit. So you have a grid of 36 photographs, and we don't say which woman came in with which outfit, and you can see these expressions on their faces. Do they feel comfortable in each other's clothes? How does it look on everybody's bodies? And you don't have the feeling like that's obviously hers, that's obviously hers. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, and it's this, when you do see the same woman in these other outfits, it erases the judgment that you might have about one of them. So it's this weird like judgment effacer.
Yeah, you don't feel like, if you see a person, you feel like, I know you, I know something about you.
Yeah.
But this,
and
that
no
piece
words,
erases
just
that.
this quiet little row. You'll see it if you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the other great things when I first got these questions and why I think it seemed like a project that could be bigger than just the people that Sheila sent the survey to originally, was that I had never really thought of myself as being someone like, I have rules for myself. I have a solid style identity. I just thought, I kind of get dressed in the morning. I like things. I don't like things, I mean, I do feel like maybe more than Sheila, I had like paid attention to women, and I had certainly watched them obsessively my entire life, which is something that actually was one of the amazing common themes that came out when we started reading all the surveys, how much women watch we have a section that's called Women Looking at Women, and interestingly and unexpectedly, how few women, when they were asked about influences, ambition, whatever, or like most meaningful, conversations they'd had about clothes with people, how few people mentioned fashion media, fashion magazines. It was like, I still, like Me and My Soldier, like I still remember this woman I saw on the tram when I was 8 years old in Montreal, and so it was very much the questions, I think, made me, it was almost like an act of autobiography, or I don't know, it suddenly, through this seemingly narrow lens of clothing, allowed me to have this much more solid sense of myself and my intentions.
Mm-hmm. The other way we got distributed this survey was we contacted journalists in other countries and had them figure out who to interview, who to send the survey to. Journalists just know everybody, so that was a hugely important resource. And
Yeah.
What's the next thing?
Do you want?
I guess the other, I mean, we could talk a little bit about. I mean, one thing that we feel that this book should have been like co-sponsored by Google Chat and Skype and all this other stuff. I mean, one thing that actually is, and I'm still sort of astonished in a way that that this was possible. First of all, because there's so many people in this book. Second of all, because the three of us were in different countries and different time zones for most of the creation and assembling of this book, and so it's this sort of it's like we used all of this new technology to make this very old technology, and yet at the same time, I feel like we really tried to honor the way that we move through space and the way we move through information now. I mean, we spent a lot of time thinking about how to organize this, how to structure this book. Go ahead. You can.
So, in some of the final days before the book was due, we all flew up to Toronto, and my mom looked after the baby, and we went to Sheila's apartment and drew an outline of Sheila's body on her wall, and then went through all of the content of the book and just said, is this this is sort of about this part of the body, hands or breasts or mothers and some uterus, and then knees, if I don't know, jeans. And we really wanted to split up these stories along the symmetry of the body, and have that be beginning, middle, end of the book, and see how it happened. And I don't know if it was a good exercise. I'm not sure how much of it is
sort of the first draft, though.
But it's also a book that you can not read in order and really just dip into in your bathroom.
Preferably your bathroom.
I wanted to see it all wavy marked because of the humidity.
We also have the survey on our website, womeninClothes.com, if anybody wants to fill it out. The experience of reading these pieces is really interesting. It's like 639 characters. I mean, we're novelists and fiction writers and illustrators. It's like a book of characters, just sort of down to their essence, revealed through what they're wearing and how they feel about it. But anyways, filling out the survey is really an interesting thing. And if you want, you can fill it out and post it and read the ones that have come out since the book.
Yeah. I think in the spirit of that kind of collaboration and question asking. I mean, I love question and answer things, if there are questions. So maybe we'll open it up to some questions and have a little conversation. Someone in Toronto, I think it was a TV host, said that she liked the book, which was great, and then she said, I feel like I'm a composite of all of my friends. And that really struck home because this started as a conversation between friends. It became this conversation between 700 women, and let's do it now. To warm up, I think we'll ask a question of the audience. So, who is wearing something tonight that they spent too much money on? 3 people.
Yeah.
Not bad.
You guys are savvy shoppers.
Who's wearing something that a friend or family member gave them?
Wow.
You guys are sentimental.
Who's wearing something that they wore yesterday?
I noticed that. I almost didn't wear the same thing. Who wishes they could go home and change and sort of like just be transported back to this audience in a different outfit?
Who has a question for us?
Yeah, do you have any questions?
Yes.
I was wondering, you said you started out sort of thinking, how do you sort of, when I talk to women who have these kind of style philosophies and find out whether people are, I think that, I wonder if it turns out that sort of most people think that other people have these philosophies and everyone wonders what their own is. Maybe like some people truly do have their own, maybe maybe they all think they've like figured it out. And it's like wise words at age 22 about like, well, this is what I always do. And I don't know anyone who, necessarily feels that they have it figured out. And I wonder what you found. Did you find that some people really like have quotable philosophies, or most people just sort of come around and we just think that everyone else knows what they're doing?
They had specific ones. I mean, I think we all had also different readings of the book. So one woman said she didn't have it all figured out, but she, knew how to apply one rule to her, like tucking her shirt into her underpants so the skirt doesn't, she had her fixes and her thing. And so
But then she also had a funny story about that, how she said when her now husband saw her doing this for the first time, he thought she was having a seizure, So I mean, I think, anytime someone, the questions were canted so that they would try to unlock, like, more than just like, I believe that, it would be something that would sort of tell you something about the person, which is another reason why when you don't have any photographs of anybody, you suddenly get a picture or a portrait of this person, her relationships, the sense of humor she has.
The most surprising thing to me was, I think most people they had thought about it to some degree, but there were some people who answered this survey who were like, my mother tried to put me in this when I was 4, and I, in these red suspenders, and I couldn't stop crying. And I thought, it made me think like some people just have always had this love and care and relationship to clothes, and I didn't feel, and like you, and I kind of felt better about myself after reading that, because maybe I've always had that relationship to words. I've always had strong feelings about books and sentences, and it was interesting to think like that style, this thing that I was interested in, style, is connected to material. So for me, I'm interested in style, and I feel like I have a facility with it as it relates to sentences and words and whatever, but not like fabrics. But for another person, it's fabric, and for another person, it's paint, and for another person, it's relationship. Like they really know how to have a good marriage. People don't all have to have. And I sort of felt better after that. I'm like, I don't have to have this in every area of my life. And the people that and I was sort of curious. I was like, why are some people born with that? Like, why are some people born with a relationship to clothing? I'll never have that deep of a relationship.
Born that way.
Yeah.
Born that way, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
I got an email, like I think you were like in the survey chapter of the book, and it was asking for a photograph of a bedroom. Or photograph
of your
bedroom
desktop.
Bedroom floor.
Oh, your bedroom floor.
Yeah, and I sent something in, but anyways, I'm like, I didn't see. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
That's my fault. You can blame me.
No, but I'm curious because you said that you were really, committed not to include photographs of women, and I was thinking like, maybe is that almost like too intimate? Is that kind of crossing a boundary? Do you like remember deciding not to include photographs of bedrooms, or
No,
The bedroom floor ended up in the book.
yeah, it was.
maybe it's in
There's three floors in the book, and I was asking for pictures because I was going to draw the clothes on the floor of a bedroom. I needed reference.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, there's no bedroom floor photographs in the book. It was a reference for
There's a little
drawing.
chapter called
Yeah.
Floor Maps, and
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
sort of like outlined all the clothes on the floor, like after trying to get dressed for a specific event. And she said, I was trying to get dressed to go to a funeral, Heidi
Yeah.
was. And she's
Yeah.
like, all the clothes you discarded and why. And it was interesting.
Yeah.
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 Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To what extent did you find that women were basing a lot of their choices on like what they liked and what they wanted to wear versus how they thought they should be wearing? So like if somebody walks in,
Yeah.
Right.
I hate this, but
So the,
this is what I need to wear to get across what I
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
question is, how many women did you find wore things because they want to wear it versus felt they had to wear it?
Yeah, we did interview a banker, actually, a woman who literally has billionaire clients. This number just blew us away. We were like, billionaire
So we
clients?
titled the piece,
It's called
Billionaire.
Billionaire Clients. Yeah, but she spoke, I mean, almost in exactly the language that you were just using. She was saying how I asked her about power suits, right? Like, what does that mean? And she just said, well, it's like it's something that you wear that you're just going to feel so confident when you go in to the meeting that you'll just kill it and you'll get that billionaire client, and but then she also was talking a lot about in the business world, she was talking about business, like proper business attire, and I was like, well, how do you learn about that? Does someone tell you? And she said, no. You learn it by looking around. You look at your superiors. I mean, it's so interesting that this is something that we all talk about, like business attire, but it's not actually written down anywhere. It's something you learn by being part of the culture. And then she was very, she was like, you can do like have your flair moments and stuff, but that you really do not want to get in the way of your messaging, is what she said. So she was like, I don't want anybody in that room looking like wondering like, why are her fingernails green? Isn't that? And she used the example of a woman who had a really heavy necklace on at one meeting, and she said, all I could do was look at her necklace and think, that must weigh so much.
And she didn't hear anything the woman said.
She didn't hear
So
anything
she's
the
like,
woman said.
Don't have your clothes distract from what you're
So
saying.
it was actually really interesting to take that. And there are lots of people in there who we've interviewed because of the career that they have and how that career has, you have to think, right, quite a bit about what you want to say, or what you want to say.
But there's also a lot of shoulds just generally in clothing culture, and I think one thing that we realized was how much the language in the answers wasn't necessarily about correction, like, oh, you should, if you have short legs, you should wear this. If you have narrow shoulders, here's what. And so it's this sort of language of correction, and that there's these flaws to be corrected, which is weird, because if you have short legs, you should wear what you want. If you have narrow shoulders, you can kind of just put on what is attractive to you. And so what came out of our questions, because we weren't saying, what's your best feature, or what do you find most attractive about you, which gets into that language of comparison and sort of, comparison generally. Because we didn't ask those questions, a lot of the answers are really, I like this part, here's how I show off my boobs and my tiny waist or my big hips, and it was much more accepting. There wasn't a lot of self-loathing about bodies in the book, which was great. It was really surprising. If you don't frame those questions that way, the answers are really refreshing. Yeah.
Yes.
My own experience has been that women tend to dress more for other women than men. Is that what you found?
Yeah. The question is, her experience has been that women tend to dress more for other women than men. That's definitely hugely what we found. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I kind of admired this movement. I forgot what the name of it was, but they were dressing in polyester and kind of the housewife look. You know what I'm talking about, right?
No.
Does anyone know? She's saying there's a movement where women
Stepford?
would dress in polyester.
When was it?
I've always been really attracted. Even
House dress?
Hausfrau.
House.
Columbia, I was always very attracted to subculture and the.
Do you want to speak into this, because it's hard to get people back?
Yeah.
There's this movement
Go for
which
it.
I read about in my subversive magazine, where, and I wish I could get the name because it was such a great, perfect name. It was a short name, and these hipsters are going around in kind of Kmart, Target,
Normcore.
Oh.
Oh.
Everyone keeps asking about
I know.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, it's tough because we've since learned.
I feel like somebody here should answer that question, so we know how to answer that question.
We're not. Yeah.
say about normcore.
I will say.
Yes, go ahead. What do you have to say
I
about
want to hear
Normcore?
what the people who really know have to say, but I will say how much I admire irony and intelligence, because when I went to Columbia, we were trying to do that. We were trying to get our clothes to take on a message about society. And that's what I sort of thought this book was about, because I think fashion goes to a mega level where you're actually doing something and saying something political by what you're putting on your back. And I think you guys get to that a little bit, and I'm very conscious of people who buy a certain way, and maybe they're holier than thou, but they still do it.
There's an interview with Mac McClellan, who's a human rights activist in the book. Mother Jones journalist, and she talks about how because of the knowledge of who she interviews and where she's gone and what she's seen, she finds it really difficult to go into H&M, into Urban Outfitters. She said there's this smell she recognizes, which is those factories, and she hasn't bought a new piece of clothing in 10 years.
Even the used clothing, like she just doesn't. She just opted out of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's pretty. I feel like somebody said that if you're gonna, even if that interview is worth the price of the book alone. Or someone said that.
And
maybe that was me who said that. but it is true that you realize you can decide, okay, I want to buy responsibly, or suddenly that interview I think throws into relief the notion of what's responsible, what's noble. Like I thought it was super noble for me. Maybe this is as normcore as I've gotten in my life, was to go to Uniqlo and buy a $7 T-shirt instead of buying a $300 The Row T-shirt or whatever, right? And that to me felt like some kind of abstinence, or like that was noble of me, or I was being smart or wise, or I was interacting in a non-consumerist fashion. And then you read Mac McClellan's piece, and you're like
there aren't two, like there isn't a factory across the street from the bad factory that has like mineral water, where the Row shirts come from.
It's that.
They all come from the same factories.
Yeah, that piece in the book changed the way that, I think you find little political pieces that you read, and that changed my outlook on buying clothing. And there's this incredible interview with sweatshop workers, Cambodian sweatshop workers, 4 of them, and we ask, again, the questions we're asking all of the women, how do you feel about what you have on your back? Not, what are the working conditions? Not political questions, very personal questions, and they are talking about, this bra I'm sewing, I know how well it's made because I made it, but who is the woman who gets to wear this bra? Like, this jealousy. Well, she even admits it's jealousy, and, this shirt I bought because it was thin material. That's the only reason, and it's hot in the factories, and I don't like how thin it is. And the colors, they know the difference in palettes, and the cheaper clothes are these jewel colors, royals and greens, but they know that muted colors are what's beautiful now, and how that palette's changed through history. So it was really interesting to hear, and heartbreaking, and that made a change in me anyway, and how I buy clothes.
I guess what I was really trying to get my comment to say, because I really appreciate what you're saying, it's almost a different avenue, is that I always admired, and I knew when I was going to college, consciously I was with this group of people, through what we were wearing, we were making fun of the nuclear family. We were really making a comment on the breakdown of the nuclear family. By the way, we were very new wave. We were very 50s, kind of oriented. It was very genderized, and it was totally ironic. And we were really bright kids marching through the streets of Columbia, going to parties, and we knew full well what we were doing. I think there are a group of smart kids on every college campus. And even high fashion, Christian Lacroix, for a while, he tried to bring in humor. We're living in a golden age. He tried to bring that in. And I think that there are a brave group of women and young people who are always trying to get to a mega level with fashion and make a comment, a witty, fun comment about
a really perfect example of that is a woman who was part of the gay activist scene in Sydney, Australia in the late 80s, early 90s, when basically the message over there, the message from the health authorities was, if you're gay, don't have sex. That was like the way to stop the spread of AIDS. And so she and all of her friends started to dress in this extremely hyper-sexualized way and would go out in the street, and very outrageous, like car crash victims and everything. And it was, and they actually did change the way that AIDS was talked about and how AIDS prevention was talked about. You know, it's like, no, you can prevent it by using a condom. You know, you don't have to stop having sex altogether. But they completely changed the conversation by what they wore.
Yes.
I was just wondering how you guys thought about what you're wearing today and so like the other events. Did you stop and pause to think about it?
Well, in the other cities, I think we mostly just wore what we were wearing that day, and I've never felt like less self-conscious about what I wore to an event. It should be the opposite, because but I just felt like, well, the book is sort of saying you can dress, everyone dresses differently and everyone has their own way of dressing, so I didn't feel like I was up for judgment in the way that if I was doing a launch for another book, I'd really be like, what am I going to wear to my launch? And I didn't feel that at all. But in this case, we got clothes amazingly sent to us by one of our contributors to sort of help us celebrate the LA launch, Rachel Comey. So she sent me this, she sent a box of clothes. So we just
sent me this.
We have to send them back. So
we have to send them back.
As we're wearing them.
Yes,
like, we keep changing all day long.
For the Hollywood.
This is our Hollywood moment.
But it was a very glamorous kind of moment.
I know. I won't be drinking red wine tonight.
But
and Leanne's wearing her own.
Yeah, I thought the three of us in the donated clothes would be a bit. I just.
But she wore it
break
earlier.
It up a bit.
Yeah.
Just wear what I was planning on wearing.
But Heidi and I are definitely. You can tell it's the same cut.
Yeah. But it has been kind of amazing to go. We've had swap meets, and I think there's one going on here. We had really big ones in Toronto and Montreal and New York, and I was actually on the way to our Toronto launch. I was just in a really grumpy, bad mood for no real reason, and I hated what I was wearing, and we had to leave the hotel room in a hurry, and I just like hated, unhappy, not happy, and then Leanne's sister-in-law came up and she was like, "Oh look, I'm gonna give this to the swap," and I was like, "I want that, I want it," and it was a 20-year-old. I have it in my bag if anyone wants to see it. It's a 20-year-old.
It's like the crazy torn sweater. But I was walking with Heidi, and she was in a grumpy mood, and as soon as she put it on, like she was like the sunshine.
And
she was so happy.
It was nice too. It was the oldest piece of clothing my sister-in-law owned, and she thought, okay, this is at the bottom. So
this made her very happy.
Very happy. So
amazing. We should put it on now.
Cashmere.
Maybe we should just take
warm gray.
One or two more questions. Hey.
How much are you thinking about this as a kind of metaphor, allegory for the relationship of the inside and the outside, and how much are you really just relentlessly coming back to the concrete? I'm curious because I am excited by this, not because I'm that curious about how to think about clothes, but because it seems to me, it's like the most important thing in the world is how what's on the outside that we can see and feel and touch relates to the inside, but I haven't heard that. Yeah, so far I hear you in a kind of a really interesting way coming back to the particular.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how you're thinking about it.
I still find it kind of bewildering. Like there's part of me that still sort of rejects the idea that the outside can even exists. Like part of the reason that I wanted to do this book is because it's not like I didn't think about clothes because I'm a schlump. It's like I didn't think about clothes because the physical world is much less real for me than the world of imagination and contemplation. I was like, so part of doing this book was a way of like, oh, you are an object in the world. People look at you. I started doing this book in I started thinking about this book in spring 2012 because that's when I was on tour for my last book, How Should a Person Be? And I was like being photographed, and I was in public, and I was like, oh, fuck, like. And so I after finishing this book, I still don't really know like if it matters or not to me because, I do think like. Part of me just completely wants to be like a brain in a vat, and just that is actually my most comfortable sort of vision of my relationship to the world, like disembodied totally. And I always sort of dress to sort of just say, like, just don't try not to look at me, as much as possible. But I think that says something about your interior. If you're dressing to hide your body, you're saying, like, maybe one of the things you're saying, what I think I'm saying is, like, my body's not really that important to me. Like, other things are more important. Like, faces are important. Like, expressions are important. And so, yeah, I think these are portraits of interiors through the lens of something, because it's hard to talk about the soul directly, But this is sort of a way of just saying, well, how does your soul or self or, essence, like, manifest in something so concrete?
Yeah.
And what does that say about who you are?
I also like to use the metaphor of a language a lot. You mentioned, like, this communication, and that's how we are in the world, and that's what people read. And, like, some people are bilingual, some people know 5 languages, some people only know 1. Like, it's really this. And then there are dialects, and so it's like, oh, that tweed or that plaid. And so there's a lot of different ways of reading. I mean, that's one metaphor. And I also...
Yeah, I think
there's... Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Totally.
I just think, like, when you're talking about lots of languages, something just came into my head, which is, like, before, when I did think about dressing, I was just like, I think I just only did speak 1 language. I'm like, well, I guess I want to be pretty. Like, if I tried to dress up, I was like, I guess I'll try to look pretty. And reading this book, I'm like, oh, people have so many different other things they want to look, and that's this fluency with languages. So when somebody looks contemporary, I'm thinking, like, they are tapped into, I don't know how people look contemporary.
Yeah.
What are they?
There's a section in the book too called Mothers as Others, which kind of obliquely deals with the interior, because we asked women to submit pictures of their mothers before they had children and talk about the woman that they never met, essentially, that they didn't see. And it came around to clothes naturally, but sort of through this little side road. And so the women were talking about, this person who they're a part of and yet don't know. And that's an interesting portrait of the women who are speaking too. And so in the language you get this
The narratives were really weird about the mothers, because you were looking at a picture of your mother at 18, and the stories that come out aren't really like, oh, I like her polka dot dress. It's just like, you look at the picture, and a lot of the stories were like, my mother had no idea that her first husband was going to die, and then she was going to, like, lose her job, and my mother didn't know that it was basically, my mother didn't know she'd be so miserable. It was a lot of it, and you just think these daughters, there's like, I'd never seen my mother so happy, and it's that I found was like one of the most tragic parts of the book, because that's the picture that, I don't know if it's true, but that's the picture that a lot of the kids had, like, my mother's life got worse from here, and I don't know.
That was your read of it.
Yeah, I know.
That was totally me. Don't you think that was? Do you think that was just my interpretation?
I had a different read.
I mean, one other thing to say just about the interiors thing. I mean, I think, and we're speaking about language and fluency in language, and I think all of us feel that we have a certain visual fluency. If you're walking down the street and you see somebody, for example, dressed with parts of their body showing, right? You sort of have a certain assumption about that person, right? You think that they are that outfit they've chosen is coded to say, like, I'm trying to attract men, or I'm not interested in the female gaze, I'm interested in the male gaze, or I just worked out and I feel really good about myself, whatever. Like, you can get like maybe a millimeter beneath the surface in this kind of, like, that's the obvious, like, fluency that we have. And after doing this book, I just feel like anyone walks down the street at me and I just think, wow, okay, I got the message, but I understand how much more there is that I am not getting. It's the tip of the iceberg. And so it makes you sort of have this weird, I mean, like, every human is walking toward me almost as like this creative story space that you get to kind of fill, like you've been given the outline by this kind of coded outfit that's presented to you. But it becomes a much more exciting, for me, I feel walking down the street is a much more dynamic, curious, and also it's an act of how much I don't know about people.
Yeah. Maybe that's a good way to end.
Nice.
So if you want, I think there's a few swap clothes 2 doors away if you want, or we can just stay here and sign books if you'd like to buy some books. But if you do have swap items, do write like a little story about it and pin it to it. There's some paper and pens there because that's the fun part.
And you can fill out the survey on our website. You
Yeah.
can read other people's surveys. It's a, sort of an ongoing organic creature.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget that you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Today's music was provided by Young Jesus. You can check them out at youngjesus.bandcamp.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.